Welcome back to Thompson's Coins, where today we're taking a look at something that's finally turned up in store. It's such a common question, and that is, do you have any US silver dollars? Interestingly, for a lot of Australian collectors, something that is becoming more and more prevalent is the collecting of US silver dollars. I've got a couple of theories as to why this is the case, but today we're going to take a look and I'll hopefully give you a bit of an overview as to the significance of both the Morgan dollar and the peace dollar. Let's begin with the Morgan dollar. So the reason it has its name is the designer was an English-born engraver who worked at the US Mint. His name was George T. Morgan. And something else that's really interesting is the significance of that year, 1878. This is when the Bland-Allison Act was passed, and this was in direct response to a previous act from 1873, which saw the complete removal of silver dollar production in the US. So this had unbelievable flow-on effects to obviously silver miners and just general economic impacts. So in 1878, the Bland-Allison Act was passed, which saw the government making regular purchases of silver between $2 and $4 million on a monthly basis, specifically to facilitate the production of the US dollar. Now, when we look at the design, we see the portrait of Lady Liberty. Interestingly, this design was modelled off a schoolteacher named Anna Williams. I find stories like that quite interesting because ordinarily you expect to see sort of a mythological depiction or something like that. And as we've seen, if you've watched some of the previous videos I've done, the sovereign design, the Benedetto Pestrucci design of St. George and the Dragon was actually modelled off a waiter holding a wine bottle over his head. So I think stories like that are quite interesting and give a little bit more context for some of these designs. Looking to the text on the coin, we see E pluribus unum, which is actually Latin for out of many, one, which is the US national motto. We also see 13 stars running around the border. This is also symbolic of the original 13 states of the United States. Now flipping over to the reverse, let's take a look at some of these design elements. The main feature we have here is the bald eagle with the outstretched wings, a very powerful bit of symbolism. Then down the bottom in the eagle's talons, we have both an olive branch as well as some arrows. So obviously symbolic of both war and peace. Above the eagle, we have the text, "In God We Trust." And then going around the legend, we have the text, "United States of America," and the denomination at the bottom there, $1. Now just above the D and the O in the text in the legend, if there is a mint mark, you will see it there. In this instance, we have the letter O, which indicates that this particular coin was struck in New Orleans. Now on the subject of mint marks, I think perhaps one of the reasons that the US silver dollar series is so popular is because not only are they quite impressive designs and there's a number of different designs out there, I think because there are so many different mint marks. You have O, which indicates New Orleans, you have D for Denver. No mint mark indicates that that particular coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. We also have S for San Francisco and CC for Carson City. Now the Carson City US dollars are actually incredibly popular. That's almost a collecting area within a collecting area. So it's a lot of fun once you start to look at the US silver dollars. So the Morgan dollar was struck from 1878 right up until 1904 and then briefly once again in 1921. Now we have the peace dollar, which was not actually named after the designer, who was Anthony D. Franceschi. I apologise in advance for the pronunciation, but this particular coin was produced in the wake of World War I. It gets its name because we have the eagle depicted with the wings down in a distinctly non-combative position, and that was to indicate a time of peace that was being entered by the world. And then flipping over, we have that lovely portrait of Lady Liberty as well. The peace dollar was struck for a grand total of 10 years. These ranged between 1921 right up until 1935. So in that sense, it's a relatively manageable set to complete one of each year. Within that, there are scarcer years that are a little harder to find, but not quite as overwhelming as perhaps the Morgan dollar collection. If you were trying to get one of each of those, including all of the mint marks, I think it would take a really long time and be incredibly expensive. The reason for production not being every single year between 1921 and 1935 was that there was a pause in production during the Depression. In terms of mint marks, the peace dollar was only produced at 3 different mints. Philadelphia produced the bulk of them. There are also Denver and San Francisco mint marks out there. Now let's learn about the composition of these silver US dollars. So the weight was 26.73 grams and the composition was 90% silver. The reason they weren't pure silver was because they were intended to be used for circulation. So they would add 10% of copper to strengthen the coins. Now the main reason I feel that the US dollar is so popular in Australia is that our Australian alternative would be the crown. And interestingly, we only have 2 years and 1 mint. All crowns, all Australian crowns, the 5 shilling piece, were produced at the Melbourne Mint. You can get 1937, of which about 1 million were produced. And then following that, due to the declining interest, in 1938, just over 100,000 were produced. So the 1938 is the key date of the series, but it's only a 2-coin series and both designs are the same. So there's not quite as much breadth and depth to, you know, the sort of the equivalent in terms of composition of the US silver dollar in Australia, which is why I think so many Australian collectors have taken up an interest in US silver dollar collecting. And I've also got to highlight, it's so exciting having a full tray of silver US dollars, seeing them when they catch the light just right and seeing them sparkle. It's quite nice. It's something that I've sort of been wanting for quite some time. A number of collectors have come into the store asking for US silver dollars, and often I may have 1 or 2 ordinary circulated examples, but it's been really nice over the past couple of weeks to be able to acquire and accumulate a bit more of an impressive array in terms of different mint marks, different years. There are a couple of runs in here in terms of a couple of years that are in sequence, and it's really nice to be able to display things like that. But similarly, it's a double-edged sword, because when someone comes in and picks out a whole variety of them, it's exciting to know that they'll go on and be enjoyed by a new collector. But then it's disappointing because then I've got a big crater in my in my new and exciting US silver dollar display tray. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight as to how exciting it is to sit down, spend a couple of hours working on putting together a tray like this, but then it's a bittersweet moment when things like that are sold. And if you're watching this video relatively close to its release date, I'll have a link in the description to the new arrivals section on the website, and I'll put a huge array of these lovely silver US dollars that I've highlighted in this video today up on the website if they're no longer available. I hope that this video just served as hopefully an interesting introduction to the wild world of US silver dollar collecting. Now, before I go and get a coffee and actually start my day, if you enjoy collecting, the greatest hobby in the world, come on down. We're here in Boronia. We're at Shop 8 in the Boronia Mall, which is 50 Dorset Square in Boronia. We are open from Tuesday to Friday, 10 till 4, and we're also here on Saturdays from 10 till 3. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this small detour, a little bit of a departure from Australian coin collecting, and I look forward to highlighting more interesting things down the track. Let me know in the comments which you prefer, the Morgan dollar or the peace dollar. Or do you like neither of them and you love the Australian crown design? I've got to say personally, I really enjoy the Morgan dollar. That's probably my favorite of the 3 we've looked at here today. Alrighty, that's it. Thanks for watching and I'll see you soon.